You know what? That might be my phone. Hold on, please. I might have left a voice message somewhere in there. Sorry about that.
Okay, we're live.
Okay. Good afternoon. Today is May 13th, 2020, Feast of Our Lady of Fatima. So, in keeping with the month of May, just a reminder that we do the Rosary every Tuesday at 12:45. So we invite you to join us and pray at home, and even on days that you're not watching, to pray the Rosary each day for those who are dealing with this situation of the virus and all the other things that are going on with that. As we gather here today, just wanted to mention something. Riverhead Local, you go online, you can get news, and every day there's news there. Denise Savelli does a pretty good job with that. But I just happened to be looking at it this morning to find somebody, and I found almost 100 people. Since February 1st, these are all the people that have died in the Riverhead area. Quite a lot. And talking with some of the funeral directors too, they have a backlog. In their places, they have 2 or 3 bodies, people, waiting for time to have a burial or a service or something. So hopefully no one in your family has suffered through this. If you have, and we don't know about it, please let us know so we can add the name to the bulletin and pray for them at Mass. We try to do that with everyone in the parish. And also many other people come here who are not from the parish anymore, but they use the cemetery. We had a burial this morning who was a parishioner, but many people use our cemetery, and we don't necessarily know who they are, but one of our deacons will do the prayer service, so then we find out. So it's good to keep us abreast of that in any situation like that. Also, again, a reminder, if you're seriously ill, if you need the sacrament of the sick, if you need viaticum or someone in your family does, please call. It's not a problem to go. I've been doing that a few times already. As our other priests in the diocese, our next door neighbor, on both sides are doing that. So the priests in the diocese and many, many priests all around here are trying to do the best they can in this situation. But unlike the normal days when they would just meet you or someone would tell them at Mass, you have to actually call us and let us know, or email us and let us know. Thank you.
If you were watching this a few weeks ago, I was talking about the patron saints in times of plague or pandemic. And I mentioned that there were the 2, well, one is a group called the 14 Holy Helpers. They were all martyrs from the early church, 9 men and 3 women. And they were picked, the 14 were picked because each one has a special role in a pandemic or a plague. A couple are just patron saints of plagues. A couple are for a happy death, for having a priest, and so on. And the other is Saint Rocco or Saint Roche or Saint Roch. And Saint Roch was famous because he was able to stop a plague. Well, I discovered that there's another patron saint of pandemics or plagues, and you won't believe her name. Her name is Saint Corona. I discovered this on just looking around on the internet the other day. And you know, there's no formal process for making a patron saint. It's just that, let's say, someone is very sick and they pray to Saint Joseph or somebody, and then they spread the word that I got better because I prayed to Saint Joseph, and other people start doing that. And then pretty soon it spreads that if you have this special problem, pray to Saint Joseph. Well, that's where patron saints are made too. Well, Saint Corona seems to be a patron saint who's been made by the internet, because I discovered that some people back, only this past March, discovered Saint Corona. There really is Saint Corona. She lived she died in the year 170. She's paired with Saint Victor. Her story is that she was just a young woman, and Saint Victor was a Christian in a time of persecution. He was being put to death, tortured. And she walked up to him and she spoke to him words of consolation and comfort and strength and support as he was dying. And of course, that revealed her as a Christian, and she was put to death. She was put to death in a terrible way. I'm not even going to describe it. I thought, well, we're just as bad today in the things we do. But anyway, Saint Corona then was put to death and died. And it's only because people found her now and were taken by the name that she's become a kind of patron saint for this corona epidemic. So her feast day, by the way, is tomorrow, May 14th. So if you're thinking of it, if we have this new patron saint, say a prayer tomorrow for that she'll intercede and that things will be better as far as the pandemic goes.
As Bishop Wcela was mentioning, that if this person told a friend or someone else, it brought me back to that commercial. You tell two people, and all the things came up on the screen, and at the end of the commercial, there had to be like about 100 little people on the screen, which is what Zoom is like now. People are using this Zoom thing, and you go on a computer and you look on the screen, and there's all sorts of boxes and meetings. Different things are happening. I, since 11, 12 years old, have always been interested in the stock market. Always was. I investigated it, I studied it. I read a book about the angels and the devils of stock market. In other words, the conscience, social conscience. And a company that always took care of its people, its employees, took care of its community, was just in what it did, took care of the environment. Those companies, over the long term, always did well. They didn't make the fast buck. They did well. But during this time frame, when it first started, probably the very beginning of March, I was driving and I noticed something right away. People were in cars on lines around the block to get a cup of coffee at Starbucks. It wasn't around the line at the other place. Now, I never go to Starbucks. I've been there once with my brother. But that day, I went to call my stock guy. I says, buy me some Starbucks. But I would shut up a lot, like about, I don't know, 15 bucks or more. Because that's how my mind works. I'm not giving you advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But when things happen, we can look at what's going on and what's important in people's lives. And I only mention that because how important has coffee become for people's lives? When this first happened, you couldn't buy coffee. It was almost gone, just like toilet paper. Now there's so much coffee, the price has dropped down tremendously of coffee. We are strange people, we are. But that's just, the way I look at stuff. I also want to mention once again about the future reopening. People keep calling and asking. One lovely lady in our parish calls every Saturday to see if Mass is ready yet. We won't know until the governor and our bishop, Bishop John Barrows, makes some public statement about that. My guesstimate is that for us here on Long Island, it's not going to be towards the middle or end of June at this point. It could be soon if we have a miracle, but there's so much that has to happen. We have to be allowed to have the first phase, then the second phase, and I think we might be in the third phase when they allow more things to happen. And we have to figure out how to sanitize the church. We'll need probably about 40 volunteers to be trained to sanitize in between each of the masses. The mass schedule might have to be adjusted to give us the time to do that. We might just begin with 2 masses on Sunday morning instead of 3. There's all sorts of options that we're thinking of, but nothing can be done yet until we get some official word. There's also going to be a limit on how many people can come into the church. So how are we going to decide that? First come, first serve? No, that ain't going to work. We have to figure something out. So pray for me and pray for all the pastors who have to make these decisions, which will not be easy when it comes about. Also, you saw our friendly dog here and our little Alf. The other night, was it 2 nights ago we saw the thing about the house? I think it was some guy does these rich houses in the area. And we watched it on the news. And one house, the person has a basement that's connected to the first floor. And there is a, how many ton tank? It's a giant ton tank. It's like an aquarium in his basement. It's giant size. I've never had a real live pet in a rectory. I never felt it was really good for someone else who might be living there, and if I go on vacation, who's going to take care of it. But I have had fake birds, and the best thing I had was a fake fish tank. That's what it reminded me of. It was about this big, and it had big goldfish in it that electrically, a current went in the water, and they moved. So I thought about that when I was watching that the other night. I'm thinking, maybe somewhere in this rectory I'm going to get another fake aquarium, and you can help me feed them. But anyway, have a wonderful day. Keep safe. God bless you.
Just along with opening the church, I heard from my brother who lives in Florida and another friend in a different diocese that the churches in Florida are opening on Sundays on May 31st. He didn't say what the regulations are going to be, just the date, so I guess they haven't gotten the information yet. But back to patron saints. Might as well finish this. There are patron saints of doctors, and there are a number of them. I'll just talk about two. One is St. Luke, who is the author of the Gospel. St. Luke appears a number of times in the letters of St. Paul. And one time St. Paul talks about St. Luke as my beloved physician. And Luke was probably traveling with Paul on his missionaries journeys. And when you think of all that happened to Paul, the times he got stoned, times he was beaten up, he really needed a doctor with him all the time. And then there's one place where he talks about an affliction that he had, and he hints that there was something to do with his eyes. So probably St. Luke was someone who was to help him with all the things he was going through. So St. Luke is one of the patron saints of doctors, Luke the physician. Another one is more modern. It's St. Gianna Molla, Italian, a woman. Her first name is spelled Gianna, her last name Molla. She was born in 1922 in Italy. She took a profession that most women would not take in those days. She became a doctor, a pediatrician. She was planning to go to Brazil with her brother, who was a missionary priest, but she couldn't go because her health was bad. So she stayed in Italy, and eventually she married and had 4 children. And when she was carrying the 4th child, the doctors discovered that besides the baby she was carrying, there was also a tumor in her womb. And she was given an option which would have either to have an abortion or else to have a very serious operation that might save the child, remove the tumor. Well, she took the option of letting the child be born, of keeping the child. The child was born healthy, and she came through the mother, St. Gianna, came through the childbirth fine, but she was pretty sick all the time, so she died a week later. She was only 40. So she's the other patron saint, another patron saint, doctors. For nurses, one of the patron saints is St. Agatha. Some of the connections are kind of strange. Agatha was a martyr in the middle of the 3rd century. And as she was being put to death, one of the things they did to her was to cut off her breasts. And then after she was tortured, she wasn't killed, she was thrown into prison. And her story says that St. Peter appeared to her during the night, and he healed the wounds that she had. And that's probably because of that she's a patron saint of nurses. Another one is St. Catherine of Siena. Sometimes the connections are not clear. St. Catherine of Siena was a great theologian, a woman in the 14th century, had a tremendous impact on the church. She spoke to popes. When the Pope was living in France instead of Rome, she got the Pope to move back to Rome. She wrote so much that she's called a doctor of the church. And she also is a patron saint of nurses, and in fact, one of our Catholic hospitals is named after her, St. Catherine of Siena. And a third patron saint of nurses is a man, St. Camillus de Lellis. Camillus de Lellis lived in the 16th century. He was an army man when he was in the army when he was 16. And he fought in a number of wars, was wounded badly in the leg. When the wars were over, he became a kind of a dissolute person, mostly gambling, wasting his life. But he got a job as a laborer in a monastery, and it was the encouraging experience for him. When he was 25, he had this new outlook on life, and he went to work in a hospital. He eventually did such a good job working as a nurse that he became the administrator of the hospital. And then he decided that there was a need for a community of male nurses And the special work they were going to do was to work with soldiers who had been wounded in wars. So he founded the community. Others joined him, and they worked first on those who had been hurt in war, but then there was a plague. They worked on a plague also. And now the religious community is called the Camillans. They still exist. There are about 1,100 of them in the world today in 35 different countries. And the priests in the community are chaplains in hospitals, and the brothers are the nurses and administrators. So there are two other patrons for nurses and for doctors as we pray for them and that they be protected as they work to help us through this pandemic.
And just throw in another saint that I had the privilege of meeting was Mother Teresa, who worked with the sick in Calcutta for so many years, the poor, sick, dying. And we're finding out now that so many of the sick are poor, the minorities in our country and throughout the world. So Mother Teresa is a great example of living with, working with, and helping to heal or bring comfort to the sick, the poor, dying. And we bless those people who are doing that now in so many different ways around the world.
Peace, God bless, take care.